Hello and welcome to QuipScope, where we talk about a brand new game or a game that's coming out very soon. My name is Ashton.
My name's James.
James Jenkins, you've been playing a game this weekend.
I have indeed.
What is it?
It's a happy-go-lucky game called Scorn.
Yeah,
it's the weird, spooky, creepy thing. So, game developed by Ebb Software. It's described as an atmospheric first-person horror adventure, which, I mean, I've made a point to jot that down because it really is weird and hard to describe in some ways.
Right.
So, if anybody's seen anything about this before, and it's been out since Friday on Windows and Xbox, it's very much inspired by the designs of H.R. Geiger. So famously helped design the alien in Alien. Mm-hmm. He helped design Alan. And everything just looks... It's H.R. Geiger, the video game, basically. It's a very weird, sort of surreal, very foreboding sort of atmosphere. And that's the big thing that they've really tried to sell. Certainly from like all previews and stuff that we've seen so far. And obviously now it's out. I've played like a couple of hours of it. And it certainly seems that they've got the... I would say it's certainly a game, but it seems like it's more there for the experience of the setting, rather than there being necessarily much of a game to it. Essentially,
what is the gameplay like? What are you doing in the game?
I wish I could tell you. No, I can't tell you. So that's one point actually. You are just sort of dropped in it, and you are just left to figure things out. It's very minimal, if any, HUD most of the time. Mm-hmm. You start off like wandering through a desert, but it's sort of like very brief flashbacks, and then you're in this horrible fleshy biomechanical monstrosity of a complex, and you're not really explained, like nothing is explained to you, and it's all just this is the sort of environment, and you go and work your way through it essentially. And it plays very much like a sort of a first person like puzzle game,
right,
in a sense, but as opposed to, so you've got things like The Witness, say for example, very like beautiful and pretty. This is very visually distinct, but literally the exact opposite.
Right.
In that it's very foreboding, very disgusting, and it's that sort of H.R. Geiger like designs where
it's a bit fleshy.
Yeah, everything's fleshy, everything's a bit sort of sexualized, and it's like lots of things going into other things. Everything's a bit penisy, if we could say that. That's essentially what the sort of environment is, and it's certainly atmospheric. It's very sort of disturbing. It just sets like an overall tone, but again, like with horror games, so you think of a horror game, usually it's some sort of action involved, or you're sort of running away from something. This seems like it's a constant sort of low level tension,
right, rather
than there being anything. And like I say, I've only played like the first couple of hours or so. I believe it's not a super long game, maybe 6 to 8 hours.
Right, okay.
And there's not really been any. That's not the sort of game it is. It's not a sort of combat game.
Is it a bit like Alien Isolation, like the first few hours of Alien Isolation, where you're on this like ship and you're like, something is wrong, and I know the game's about aliens, so I know that there's going to be an Alan somewhere. But is it kind of that like Alan? You're going through an area and it seems fine, but you know that something's going to happen. But obviously, if the ship's covered in fleshy PVC tentacles,
it feels like you've arrived and you're long since past all the things that have gone down, right? Already, all the bad stuff, and it's there's a certain sort of sense of dread, and like you're expecting something to happen, and I think this is where it's kind of divisive in certainly all the reviews that I've seen go. It's been very much a love it or hate it sort of deal.
The
for
Marmite
critics.
of fleshy-based horror.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend eating anything that you find in that game. It's just, but it's you're kind of expecting something to happen, but essentially you're just sort of, like I say, you're not given any explanation, and that's fair enough. Like it's all about the environmental storytelling and just the mystery. Like you're wandering through and seeing. Eventually, you'll get to like a point where you can't progress, and there's like a certain puzzle, so you can interact with certain things.
Okay.
In terms of actual like gameplay and controls, like there's not really much else to do with that. You can't like you walk at a fairly sort of chill pace, especially given the circumstances. I'd be sprinting around like panicking, but so you can interact with certain puzzles, and it'll like usually involve like moving some sort of like a fleshy crane arm, and so one of the very early things, it's so weird to describe, but yeah, one of the early puzzles is like you're essentially trying to get this and you only realize this after you're doing this, but there's these sort of like pods with these malformed like human-like creatures,
right?
And once you realize like you're doing one sort of puzzle that's like all sort of built into the environment itself, but you're controlling it from a little bit further away, like you're moving certain pods across a grid to get the right one, and you use this fleshy crane to pick it up, and then you're like, oh good, that's crumbled away, and there's just a horrible fleshy like half human thing in there looking horrible. I named him Greg. Greg in the egg.
Good. Yeah.
And yeah, and then you proceed to just go through, and like you kind of have no choice but to use these horrible like torture devices. Like he doesn't have a good time out, Greg.
Right.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that eventually leads to sort of progression. Yeah, in a very sort of roundabout, abstract way. I mean, he ends up not having a good time, and then you pick up a severed arm, and you're like, yes, progress. This must mean something
Good.
important.
Right, okay.
But yeah, it's all very much like you are literally just figuring it out. It's very sort of, work out the environmental puzzles yourself, but at the same time, it's not the entire environment is a puzzle. There are key things to sort of interact with. So
right, yeah. Because things aren't like misleading you, that you just kind of like will do something for a while, and then it's like, oh, actually, this is nothing right now.
It's a little bit. There are sort of some things where you're like, oh, okay, well, I obviously don't. You start interacting with one thing, and you figure out, actually, no, I need to do something else first. So there is a little bit of working that out in which order and how to sort of do things. But really, yeah, it's. I mean, I should say it's incredibly done, the actual environmental design. I'd stop short of saying like, oh, it's beautiful, but it's not. It's really not. It's very sort of grim and grisly.
But how they've done it is really well.
Yeah, really like striking visually. It just is a bit of an unusual one in that it just
Are you
feels.
enjoying it?
It feels more like a walking sim / puzzler. And I don't know if I'm enjoying it, to be honest.
Okay.
I want to finish it because it is certainly an experience, and it's quite a short game as well. But yeah, I can completely understand why it's so divisive, and for people that want a bit of a spooky vibe, but not necessarily any jump scares. There haven't really been any jump scares so far. A couple of moments where it's like, oh, that's a weird thing that's there, but not. In your traditional like, boo, he's popped out from the corner sort of thing.
Right, okay. Interesting.
I mean, if you're somebody that like appreciates a good sort of environmental design, big fan of Alien, big fan of fleshy biomechanical things, then yeah, it's absolutely worth experiencing, and especially so it is on Game Pass. And I think that will really help, get a lot more people sort of at least trying it out. But it absolutely is one of those that is not for everybody because it's so abstract in a sort of game design, and actually there's not a lot of gameplay there. It's more of an experience that's just designed to like walk around and appreciate the monstrosities that the developers have like created, the world that they've created. So
wow, okay.
yeah.
Well, there we have it then. Scorn The game that is not a game really, but kind of is, I guess. Kind of.
Interactive H.R. Geiger museum.
Yes, yeah. Just enough time for a couple of quips then, I guess.
Ooh, wow.
Scorn, more like score. Look how many penises there are.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Scorn, more like Natalie and Bruglia's Torn, because I'm torn as to whether I'm enjoying it or not, but it's certainly an experience.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much, James. Thank you for listening. If you were listening on the podcast feed, you can check out the gameplay on the YouTube channel. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.